My name is George Carter and I'm an ambulance driver in a small town called Havenbrook, a place that looks peaceful on the surface, surrounded by thick forests and winding roads rarely traveled at night. My job demands alertness and focus, but that evening everything felt routine. I was getting ready to start my night shift. The siren lights flickered briefly as I inspected the ambulance, making sure the first aid kit was stocked. The engine was running smooth and the emergency radio was working. The streets were quiet and the cool night breeze carried the scent of yesterday's rain still lingering on the pavement. Nights like this were my favorite, silent, still, and strangely comforting. My partner Maya, who usually rode with me on night shifts, was on leave, so I was alone. Inside the ambulance, I took a sip of hot coffee from my thermos and stared at the long dark road ahead, feeling calm. Everything seemed perfectly normal, but I had no idea that tonight would change the way I looked at my job and the town I thought I knew so well. A few minutes after leaving the station, my emergency radio crackled, breaking the silence with a burst of static. A distress call came through, somewhere on a small road near the edge of the forest, about 15 minutes away. The strange part was that the transmission was faint, and I couldn't hear anyone speaking on the other end. My instincts told me something was off, but as an ambulance driver, I was trained to stay calm. I switched on the sirens and turned toward the location. The road, which had felt quiet moments before, suddenly seemed different. The trees lining the highway leaned in like they were hiding something, and a thin veil of fog began to settle across the asphalt. My headlights cut through the mist, casting long, wavering shadows across the road. When I arrived, I saw an old house, abandoned by the looks of it. The lights inside were off. The front door hung slightly open, and from inside I heard a faint voice calling my name. My heartbeat quickened. No one should have been here, but the voice, it clearly spoke my name. A cold shiver crept up my spine as I realized this wasn't an ordinary call. Something was waiting for me inside that house, and I needed to find out what. Holding my breath, I stepped out of the ambulance and walked toward the house, illuminated only by the rotating lights behind me. Every step on the dried leaves felt painfully loud in the stillness. Up close, the house looked far bigger, with broken windows reflecting the swirling red and blue glow like watchful eyes. 00. My goal was simple: find the source of the voice and make sure no one inside needed help. But as I reached the porch steps, the front door slowly swung shut on its own, the creaking noise raising goosebumps across my arms. When I tried the knob, it wouldn't budge, as if something unseen was holding it closed. I circled around and slipped in through a half-broken window, careful not to make too much noise. Inside, the air was thick with dust and rotting wood, mixed with a damp smell that felt unsettlingly unnatural. The voice returned, clear this time, like a whisper right behind me, still calling my name. My steps grew heavier, and the shadows on the walls seemed to move with me. Every room I passed held its own mystery: an overturned chair, a dusty trail of footprints, and corners where the darkness looked deeper than it should be. A part of me wondered if I was losing my grip on reality, but I pressed on. I had to. Time felt distorted as I walked through hallway after hallway. The ambulance lights barely reached inside, leaving most of the house drowned in black. Every sound, my footsteps, the wind slipping through cracks, even a distant drip of water, felt amplified, making my heart race faster. Tonight wasn't an ordinary emergency call. This house held something else, something I didn't understand, and if I wasn't careful, I could lose myself in more ways than one. I searched the final hallway, the one that seemed to lead to the living room. The whispers grew louder, brushing past my ear, yet every time I turned, nothing was there. My mind and instincts battled each other, one urging me to keep looking, the other screaming for me to get out while I still could. I checked every door, every window, every corner for signs of life, but all I found was emptiness. Vacant rooms, shifting shadows, and that same voice echoing my name over and over. It felt like the house itself refused to let me leave with anything certain. Panic began to set in. It felt like a maze built to keep intruders wandering forever. The ambulance's rotating lights were now just a faint glow through the windows, leaving most hallways in suffocating darkness. At that moment, I had one last choice: continue deeper into this unsettling maze with the risk of losing myself, or go back to the ambulance and figure out another approach. Every instinct begged me to flee, but something deeper urged me forward. With trembling hands and a shaky breath, I opened the last door, hoping for answers, terrified of what I might find. When I pushed the door open, the ambulance lights spilled across the room, and what I saw wasn't what I expected at all. In the center of the room was an old radio, decades out of date, flickering weakly as it transmitted a soft voice, calling my name. No person, no creature, no ghostly figure lurking in the corner, just an antique radio, glitching and looping a broken distress signal. Relief washed over me, mixed with a bit of embarrassment. The whispers, the shifting shadows, everything had been a combination of bad acoustics, reflections from broken glass, and my own imagination running wild. I took some photos, wrote down notes for the report, and stepped outside with steadier breaths. That night taught me something important about staying calm through uncertainty, and about how easily fear can twist what we think we see. Back in the ambulance, I started the engine, letting the rhythmic hum settle my nerves. The fog began to lift, and the road ahead no longer felt threatening. I had faced one of the scariest moments of my career and walked away stronger for it. As I drove back to the station, morning air drifted across the roads of Havenbrook, carrying the earthy scent of wet soil and dew-covered leaves. The first touch of sunlight cut through the remaining fog, transforming the eerie night into something peaceful and warm. That night taught me a valuable lesson. Fear is born from what we don't understand, and courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to move forward even when your hands won't stop shaking. I learned to trust my instincts, rely on reason, and remember that sometimes the scariest mysteries have the simplest explanations. When I parked the ambulance and stepped out, I looked up at the brightening sky and smiled. Last night had been intense, unsettling, and unforgettable, but it made me more prepared for whatever the next emergency might bring. And from that night on, I held on to one truth. Courage isn't always about facing monsters. Sometimes it's about facing your own fears and choosing to keep going.